and ecosystems to thrive. And yeah, I'm just gonna go with that. And I will pass to who hasn't got. I'll pass to you, Libby.
I'll pass to James.
I'd be a dog because I think loyalty is very important for resilience, and I'm not sure what parameter I would choose, but aligned with other answers.
I can pass it for you to Mateo.
Hey guys, I came in a little bit late, so skip it.
I can't hear you well, but I guess the question is, what would you be as an animal, and what params choice would you have as that animal?
Can you listen to me properly now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know how those questions are related, but an animal, I don't know, an ox I would be. I don't know, because this year is the Chinese year of the ox, so I would be that, and it's kind of resemblant to a bull. So yeah, I don't know, I liked it. But parameters, yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that, so I pass it back to you, Lily. Sorry.
I think a bull is very hard. It's the bull market. Your choice is for everything to go up. I pass to Griff.
Man, it is such a hard question, Olivia. Where do you come up with this stuff? I've been thinking this whole time about some animal to choose, and the only thing I could come up with was a bear, and it seems kind of corny, but the bear obviously would choose to eat Goldilocks and just be like, no, I don't think so. You're not stealing my shit. So it would vote down on Goldilocks and actually go for 8 just because it's going to beat Goldilocks. That lady keeps stealing her crap. I'll pass it to Mount Manu.
Thanks, Griff. Man, it's a good question, Lee. I'll give you that. For sure, it's a great question. I'd pick a ram. They're a symbol of courage. I think what we're doing is courageous. We might not see it right now, but when the solutions that we're building start gaining traction, and we start becoming popular, and we start democratizing some of the power or distributing some of the power a lot of people have, it's not gonna sit well with them. So it takes courage. It's also discernment and wisdom. And biblically, it's a symbol of protection and guardianship. I think I said this before. I think leaders ought to be guardians and not the definition that's thrown around right now, that it's just self-interest disguised as, hey, I'm going to serve you. So a ram, and honestly, I don't know which params to pick. I did an omnifork, so I try to pick the best params of everyone, given what the community had voted, and also employing some discernment on which of them would fit together, not just making a params Frankenstein. So the params I chose, I suppose, and I'll pass it to you, Levy. I think I was the last one.
Paua, are you there?
No, that's our bot.
Oh, we have a bot now. Okay, that's fancy. I think I would pick a wolf for something similar that Manu said. the wolf, the leaders of the pack, they stay all the way behind the pack. So they are like with the macro view, just making sure people are taking like the best steps out of their own autonomy. And if anything goes wrong, there is that like security that there is someone looking after them. And I think and they're also super loyal and they have fun with each other, and they are very smart too, and also aggressive when needed. So I think the parameters need to be somehow this like overseeing the boundaries, like having clear boundaries, but also protecting the pack and making the best decisions together. But maybe that wasn't, yeah, it's hard to, I don't know which params I would pick. But cool. Yay, thanks everyone. So today, I don't know if everyone saw, but there was a post that Jeff made, and I just wanted to address this because I think it's nice to have a space and a call for us to debate something. And he raised some risks. So maybe this is a good place to talk about the risks that were raised. That were mostly around praise and the impact hour distribution. So is the distribution of impact hours fair to people's contributions? Was there a biased quantification? How is that going to look like when the TEC tokens are distributed after the Commons upgrade? Will this distribution be fair between backers and builders? And are token engineers having a fair governance power into the system? And are we like able to make the best decisions out of the configuration we have? So I think today is the last day to make proposals. Not the last, but the most important. So maybe we can have an open discussion about this. I don't know if anyone has thoughts already. If not, I can propose a few questions. But if anyone has questions, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I read it and I think it's a very valid argument that he put forth, but I just don't have enough information to, make a decision or have a viewpoint either way on it, because it's still subjective at the end of the day. And I know that we do have quantified evidence of it, but I would have to see like examples where, and that would require calling people out or like isolating things like that. So
Yeah, so maybe just a quick review of the blog post. So Jeff makes this post that, hey, maybe the distribution could be better, right? How do we, does this distribution look good? And like most distributions that happen generally at random, or when you you create a system and then something pops out, at least in crypto, it's very often a power law distribution. And because Septimus and Santi and Craig are really high on the list, and it follows the power law distribution. And so the question is that fair? Is it fair that it follows this thing? And my argument would be probably no, but it's probably not fair. But I don't know if fair is something that's achievable. So, because what is fair? What is fair? And it might not be the right question. What are the actual requirements that we're trying to achieve? And I think the better question is that there was a really great post by Vitalik recently about legitimacy, and he actually went on the Bankless yesterday or today or something that Tam was telling me about. And he talks about how important legitimacy is. And I think that the praise process is ridiculously legitimate. Mostly because of the open manner that it is and the transparent manner that it is, but also in the context of crypto team distributions. It's pretty much, as far as I can tell, as far as I know of, to me, this is the gold standard, honestly. I can't think of another team distribution for a project that even comes close to being as cool as this, right? Like, so we have an open, anyone can dish praise to anyone for anything. So it's very open and permissionless. Like, there is a tiny bit of barrier of like, hey, you have to ask to dish praise. It's a very small barrier of entry. Anyone who asks gets the praise thing. They just need to be told how to use it. That's the only reason we put that barrier there. And then anyone can go to the praise quantification party, and actually anyone can even be a praise quantifier. Meta Verde has been doing it recently, and she's not a steward. So even though we kind of put up a barrier there, she was close enough, and she made it in, and she started quantifying. Also, the praise process is, a little bit more subjective than things, and that makes it in some ways like never going to be fair. It's always going to be open to this question of fairness because it's subjective. But the objective alternative is like the fair launch or crypto mining, which I bring up Vitalik again, where he's like, look, we're spending $38 million a day on security of the network and $30 million a year on supporting development. Like, uh-oh. It's not necessarily a fair distribution, or it's a fair distribution, but it's not an accurate distribution, but it is a legitimate distribution. Like, it's not the best distribution. And I really like how the praise system takes, because I think it could have been better if there was just like 3 or 4 people who came into a room and decided what it should be, right? Like, that would be that's the way that most teams do it. But we took a different approach. We took a signal aggregation approach. And now we have this distribution of impact hours, and its legitimacy can be further validated by the fact that anyone can propose how we convert impact hours into hatch tokens, and then that will actually be voted on by anyone who is engaged enough to have given the common stack an address so they can get tokens to vote. So I think this praise process, it might not have given the perfect results, but I think that it has given very legitimate results, and something that we can be proud of and even stand on as something that people, as a gold standard. But I would love to hear counter arguments, even just take devil's advocate.
Do you remember the name of the Medium article of Vitalik's, where he talked about legitimacy?
Probably on his blog.
Oh, okay.
James, you wanted to say something?
I was going to echo what Griff said at the end. It is something you can stand on. It's definitely an impressive, experiment over a long period of time, and we've learned a lot from it. I'm excited to see more and more tokens get launched through Commons, and I'd love to see more praise types. So it's kind of like, a more polycentric approach to having different groups, assigning the value to contributions, instead of like everyone being welcome to quantify the impact hours in one system, like one praise token. We could have a lot of different kinds of praise. I think that would be cool.
I have a question. Where, like, if someone has a, I don't know, any way of giving back input or any suggestion for improvement to the praise system, is there any space for that? And where does it submit it?
Yeah, Jeff actually created a document for in his forum post with some suggestions for improvement for praise. So, and it's definitely, I mean, right now it's this horrible spreadsheet. This thing needs to be like totally overhauled, and we should absolutely do like case study on praise and like understand if like how can we make it better after this experiment. I would be skeptical of trying to change the impact hour distribution because that challenges the legitimacy of the distribution. So as far as action steps on impact hours as they are, there is a little bit of a process. If someone says, hey, this person was completely missed in this praise distribution, we can give them extra praise this round, right? So if we feel like there are people who are underpraised, then let's praise the fuck out of them, and let's give out more impact hours. But let's make sure that we follow the same process so that the process maintains legitimacy. But that's for the TEC launch, which is coming up in a couple months. For future commons, I mean, first off, it shouldn't be a spreadsheet. Like, that's ridiculous. It should be an actual application that makes it easy and has some semblance of user experience. And we should definitely consider changing a lot of things.
I think my concerns related to this are, I agree with most of what you said, but I've been thinking a lot about what resources do we have in our system. And I think that was the biggest challenge, to understand the boundaries in the beginning, because it was very abstract to me. What were the resources? But then now I'm thinking like governance power is actually a resource that we have in the system. And the tokens are obviously a resource. And I think there was another one I took a note of. Can't find it now, but even just thinking as governance as a resource, it feels very difficult to tie it with compensation. So we've been tying like impact hour distribution according with compensation, and then when we think about governance power and them having the same pipelines, it feels like confusing, and maybe there's something there that could be a little bit looked into. Like, have we been considering maybe a token engineering tribute? Like, because there is the cultural build tribute that has been building the DAO itself. And this, of course, the people that are involved in the DAO have so many insights for taking the best decisions. But then the people that have been involved in token engineering projects also have very good insights to take the best decisions. And I feel like maybe the reach to these people could be a little bit balanced or something.
Yeah, and I mean, I would like to play devil's advocate to this because, but at first I'd like to say that the thing I love about praise is that it's subjective to the standards of each individual. So my standard for dishing praise may be different from yours and different from somebody else. So in a way, I think that's a very fair way to approach praise. I think the biggest problem with praise is that I think the value for that praise is a little too high when we relate it to impact hours, and therefore relates to TEC and an economic reward. Because I do think the true value within praise is the social aspect of it. And so devaluing that from an economic standpoint, as far as an economic incentive, would be very beneficial, especially after the hatch is over, to maintain that praise system where you get rewarded, but a very minimal amount, and that way, people who do like major pieces of work, contributions that are fundamental to the foundation of the TEC as a DAO, can get rewarded in a maybe even a different manner, whether it's paid directly or from an operations fund or whatever it may be. But praise shouldn't be the main way to get rewarded for the work you do. And then the other aspect is amplifying the signals that we do have. I know that we can people's praise that they give. I don't know if that actually amplifies their praise received within Discord. If I praise someone individually and you like that praise, does that get amplified or not? And and then a lot of times, we get lumped in to a bunch of praise with a lot of people, and maybe somebody wants to amplify one of those people, and you can't do that. And so, me getting praise for attending a meeting and Eduardo for doing 12 different interviews is it's not equal, and those things need to have the ability to be amplified if they can be.
I feel it's subjective, but at the same time, I remember at the beginning when I was joining more price quant, if Edu is doing a lot of work, even if the price says he have let's say 10 hours, we just pump the hours and that's fine. And yeah, I also agree a lot with the legitimacy is really important. I was also very worried when we were starting with when at the beginning Griff and Levi were doing the price quant, and they were not receiving impact hours for the whole project. And then we were changing it, and I was a bit worried about the legitimacy, but at the end it worked out pretty well. And I was going to say something else, but I don't remember now. So I'll pass it back to you, Levi, and if I remember, I just jump in.
There's just something I wanted to add to what I said before that I forgot, that is, understanding governance power as a resource, then what are the boundaries of this resource system inside of other resources we have? So maybe a few of the boundaries do have to do with who can dish praise, with who can quantify has been, maybe it should be even more open, but who can dish maybe could be revisited of. I don't know. I don't know. I still have to process the thoughts, but understanding a little bit better the boundaries of this, and if every working group is well represented, for example, maybe we could have sessions that into one praise quant we invite for 10 minutes all of the working group leads or people that participate regularly in a working group to come and help in the quantification in the end, to be oh, is this distribution fair? Maybe this person could have more or less.
Yeah, I remember also. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
I was just going to say that's really interesting. I'm thinking of the trade-off. Opening up the praise distribution was probably easier, but doesn't add as much value as opening up the quantification. But opening up the quantification is a lot more challenging because you have, maybe a call with 20 people trying to look at a spreadsheet and quantify these really subjective things. So I think that's really interesting to play with the trade-off, and that's why I'd suggest multiple types of praise. You can imagine one that is tied to the economic value, going back to a point mentioned earlier, and one that is not tied to economic value. Or you could have a group of developers giving a certain type of praise for developers, and maybe the comms working group has a type for communications work, and so on. but there's so many different ways to play with the trade-offs.
Yeah, also, another thing I wanted to say, like, at least when I was quantifying price, and I know Griff also does that. Like, when you're quantifying the price attendance, like, for example, if Livy is leading this call, I put more points on Livy than on everyone else most of the time. And if, for example, if Griff is also contributing more, maybe like since Livy is leading it, like maybe like I put Livy 60 minutes and then Griff maybe 50, and then like everyone else like 20 or something like that. At least I was doing that, and I feel like that's somehow like where you. And another thing, like I feel like where this system is, from my point of view, like not being super accurate, it's not because of the praise, but it's more because of like this thing like we do, like we remove actually the praise from people because they get paid, and I feel like this messed the things a lot. But that's my feeling.
Yeah, was a challenging thing, but then again, at the same time, the people who got paid can take those funds and spend them to buy their impact hours, right? So it's like, whereas the people who didn't get paid, they can't do that because they didn't get any money. So the real question is like, okay, what are the goals of the praise system? What was the intent? Are we achieving them? Like, what are we trying to achieve with impact hours? Are we achieving those goals? I think some of the arguments I've heard about impact hours is like, oh, if I'm a token engineer and I look at this impact hour thing, I might not be excited about jumping into the TEC because of the distribution. Like, I don't know who Zeptimus is. What's his token engineering credit? But at the same time, I don't know that was the stated intention of impact hours. I don't know that is like, I don't know if we were saying, hey, we're going to have these impact hours so that we can like really sell people on like, look how many awesome people are getting tokens. I don't know that was high on the like goals or point of impact hours. And the point of impact hours was to distribute, the people who are here creating impact. This is a way to like number one, acknowledge their work with praise, and over years of this building this praise process, I found that it was better to avoid quantifying up front, because it'd be a lot easier if you just said, oh yeah, praise Zargum 10,000 points for, being the best token engineer ever, right? But then it doesn't feel as good, It doesn't achieve this like gratitude culture. It doesn't achieve the like, feeling of community and family. It feels more mechanical and like tipping, and it has a different thing. So then we separated the quantification out so that we could just have raw acknowledgement and then quantify later. And then when we quantify, we do some sense making on it, and so now we have the praise system has two things: acknowledgement and reward. Now, reward has this baggage that Livius mentions, which is, reward also has governance rights, right? Because in crypto, tokens have governance rights and money. And I feel like this is baggage that has been inherited, not necessarily like something that we can fight against. It is something we can try to improve on. But then again, at the same time, in many ways, the people who, we're not only doing token engineering, like what proposals in token engineering should be passed, which I think people have been hanging around in the TEC and playing in this space probably have some decent perspective on, but also there is DAO operations. It's not 100% of our efforts, but the best people to decide on on the votes for DAO operations probably aren't the best people to decide on DAO operation votes are the people that are engaged and around and have earned impact hours. I would say that's a very, very clear. I think it'd be very hard to argue against impact hour for governance rights, especially around DAO operations.
I also think that sometimes like we aim for something and like we end up having like too much of what we wanted, and like the idea I think was to end a little bit the technocracy of having the same people and like welcoming new people and new disciplines to collaborate on the community. And I think that more or less that's what we have done. But maybe in this in this like table where it shows the distribution, it like I think that what I can understand of the post is that maybe the token engineers, hard token engineers, are not that much high up in the list. But yeah, on the other side, I also see that the people who is on the first part of the list are a lot of people who is new to the ecosystem, and that's also good. And like and that their contributions are not only on the thing that they have a lot, that is that we already have had, that is token engineering knowledge, but like hard token engineering knowledge, but it was the complementary side that we were wanting to stimulate, so that it can like mix. But what I think that could be like a great topic to discuss is this barrier between what is a token engineer and what is not a token engineer. I mean, like for me, it's a great zone because I don't know how to manage CAD, if that is a requirement. But I feel that I am working here, and that through my knowledge, I am also like contributing to the token engineering field. So it's like, yeah, am I a token engineer, or only people who knows the token engineering tools are token engineers? It's, yeah.
I think that the system, the praise system, has a lot of valuable adds that we've experienced. First of all, almost anyone could praise. Anyone could join the quantification, parties. That's amazing. And I mean, in other communities, you may jump in and you see there's a system. It might be fair, but you are far away from participating in it. You just join and it's there. It might be good. Most of the time it's fair, but there's no way you can participate. I just remember joining. I've joined twice, and I was with Zepti. Another time I was with Tam, and I was listening to Zeptimus saying, "Hey, when there's a meeting and I have to value, I give a little bit more points to the leader of the meeting," and listening to that argument and being able to translate his own argument into the parameters of weights. And then I remember Tom going through this Fibonacci method that she used. It was incredible. And it's incredible being able to integrate all those things into a system that gets it all and comes out with an outcome. Nothing is perfect, but I have not seen any other system so inclusive. And that's just unbelievable. Then, what that translates into, myself, I wasn't even jumping for expecting anything. And some people may say, you have a lot of impact hours. Yeah, I have them, but I didn't look for them. I was getting engaged, and that's what happened. Other people decided to nominate, and I ended up there. And then Zeptimus went over me. I remember Sam was leading a few weeks. What the hell? I may consider myself much more valuable. All the experience, all the friendship, all the knowledge, and all the content that I got than those whatever amount of tokens that I get from the impact towers I have. And some feel different. But the beauty is that this is a living thing. It's not something static. You can participate rotate. You can nominating, qualifying. You can join every single week if you want. I really value the leading that you've been taking place, Griff. Going through all those qualification parties. It's really amazing how you've spent so much time. I remember Libby for the very first weeks, and it's not easy. I mean, spending time there and doing all this work, it's not fun. It's just not fun. I even remember the very first weeks you were not doing, when you were doing it, you were not even getting rewarded, which was even worse. So, I mean, that's incredible. And nothing can be perfect, but just integrating every single one into that system whenever they won, it's just unbelievable. So to me, it's just the perfect tool.
Just want to say it got a lot more fun now that we have GroovyBot. GroovyBot has made a party. Okay, it's fun. It's fun.
Cool. So I'd love to share my thoughts as well too. So first off, that post by Vitalik is super interesting, as well as the Bankless podcast. And one of the points that he makes in it is that there's many different types of legitimacy, and they're not all good. A dictatorship is legitimate by brute force, right? And then there's other types of legitimacy as well, by process, by fairness, by participation. And after hearing so many of the sentiments from everyone here, the two whales in the room, the two Impact Hour whales in the room, and everyone else as well, it's definitely sort of triangulating my thoughts around this idea that, praise has so many strengths, and it has some weaknesses. It's imperfect, but it seems like we're triangulating around this idea of legitimacy by participation, because it's very open and it has been from the beginning. And I thought that's very interesting. That's just a very interesting connection for me to make while I'm listening to everyone discuss this. And then I want to just say, I mean, kudos to this entire community. Jeff is seeing something and it's uncomfortable, and it might cause uncomfort in this community, but he puts it out there, and I think we'll look back at this and be able to brag about it, about the openness of this community. I think this is like a triumph for us, actually. And then it's sort of this idea of like, when you're in yoga class and you're twisted into a pretzel, and it's like, peace is being calm in physical discomfort. And I feel like this is what we're experiencing right now, like being calm in the discomfort of having these conversations. And kudos to all of us for just discussing it head on. Around that praise weaknesses, this is an amazing experiment that we're doing. So of course, the first time you do anything, any process, there's going to be some things that you would do better next time, right? And of course, we can look at those things for the next iteration. I definitely feel like what we have now is like this, consensus around legitimacy by participation. But I really like what Livia discussed around the governance as a scarcity, like as a resource, really resonates with me too. And that maybe there's, what we have now is financial compensation and governance, which are inextricably linked. We couldn't decouple them if we tried, right? Well, we could, but it would radically change the model of the system. And, there's some of the weaknesses that I sort of see is this coupling, like it might be more strength in being able to decouple this. And then also to maybe the praisers to better understand the weighting during the praise quantification. There is some advantage that it's open and subjective, but it also is sort of like, perhaps it could be stronger with some boundaries in place as well, because one of the things that we've noticed is that the people that are quiet or not in the spotlight receive much less praise, even if their work is really important to what we're doing. And the people that are often in calls and are very visible receive a lot of praise because everyone sees them and they're always on their mind. So there's that sort of inconsistency, which we could probably work to balance better, so that the people that are quiet and not present all the time, but are doing really significant work, can also be elevated to maybe a better in relation to their outputs and work. What else do I want to say? Oh, so the risk, this has been on my mind since the params party video with Zargum and Trent, where Jeff sort of asks about the governance pie chart, because we are showing the rage quit, like we show where you can rage quit. And sort of when he asked that question, it's something flipped in my mind where I thought, oh yeah, that, there's governance. Like, is it comparable to the rage quit, figure? And if I was a token engineer, or one of the many that I've done Hatcher outreach with, and I was deciding whether I want to participate in the TDC hatch and how much I want to participate, what kind of impact would these numbers have on me? Would I look at it and say, how much do I need to put in order to have weight, the same governance weight or more than the top 10 or top 20 in the list? So I looked at some of those numbers today, and for like, if we were looking at the top proposal that's on token log today, and we look at the minimum at the target rate, I'd have to, if I was a token engineer that was on the long tail of people who don't get a lot of credit because they're not present and they're not visible and they haven't received a lot of praise, even though they're building really important things in this token engineering community. It's what, 30 to 50,000 DAI that they would have to put in just to sort of have an equal rate in the top governance weight in the top 10. And I think it's like 15 to 30 to be in the top 20. And when I was talking with some potential hatchers around their soft commitments, one of the things that people have said was, I would want to participate if I had significant governance weight. What is everyone else putting in? And it sort of gets this discussion, and it was sort of like, that's the thing that sort of lodged in my mind. And I kind of want to ask, is this a risk that, we want to get more token engineers in? And is our initialization of the impact hours deterrent to that or not? And it's really an open question, and I don't have the answer. I'm still sort of thinking about it. One of the things that Griff mentioned to look at too is like the percentage of the pie. And in this particular scenario with the top rated proposals today, the proportion of the pie of the builders is 20% versus 80%. So it's sort of still, it's still like, I feel like we're putting some pieces together for a complete picture. But I think it's really a testament to all of us that we're discussing this so openly, because it's important. Yeah, that's it.
I just wanted to say, hey guys, I'm here to join in the last few minutes of the chat. I know I missed most of it. I had a conflict, I apologize. But yeah, if there's anything, I'm happy to weigh in, but just coming in, not sure where the community discussion is at. So feel free to tag me in as needed.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, we did go around. We addressed your points and kind of looked into the praise system as like, what are the best things we see in it? What are some points of improvement? I took a few notes, probably incomplete ones, but I can pass you a summary after. But also I was thinking from everything I heard, first of all, it gives me a very comforting feeling of, there is a feeling of togetherness and an open-minded approach to everything that we come across. And I think this is a huge amazingness of this community, that we really have achieved this like point as a collective. And there was something Juan mentioned about, are we like, what makes someone a token engineer? And I have been thinking so much about this, and I feel like the answer I found for myself is that curiosity is what does it. And as long as we are constantly asking ourselves if we are curious about token engineering, then we are in the path towards becoming a token engineer, or towards assisting the advancement of this field. And I think curiosity also implies observation and being present. And maybe these are things that we could also praise more. Like maybe those are the questions that come to our gratitude culture of what are the things that we're actually grateful for, and have we fell into a cultural bureaucracy of what are the things we praise. So we have kind of implied that we praise everyone for attending calls. And in the beginning, for example, it was great because it was like me and Griff in the call, and then someone would join and it was like, oh my God, I praise you so much for joining this call. And it's still amazing that people participate, and this generates the attention and this spaces for sharing. But then maybe there's something that someone said in a call that could be praised. Maybe there is a point of view that could be praised. Maybe there is an approach, a way that someone dealt with me. And we're also using and improving source cred. And actually, when we look at source cred, the chart is pretty similar to the praise results we have. And this is something interesting. So Tam is the whale on source cred. And we've been using the inputs from GitHub and the forum. So I think this is also an interesting, like maybe what it's in source cred is a little bit more objective and specific to the tasks we've been doing. And praise could take even more the subjective route. So yeah, maybe it's good to start thinking about like, what are the specific things? What are the subjectivities we want to be praising, and what are the behaviors we want to incentivize, and maybe understand if there is something we don't like in the community, a certain behavior or something happening, and how could praise and gravity like walk alongside each other on a like constant risk management through like the mutual monitoring that we're having, through like talking about uncomfortable situations openly or with gravity, and through like talking about things that we do enjoy also in an open way, because this is also vulnerable. And maybe taking risks is also praising someone for something very specific, that it's like, oh wow, that will they will see that I was observing them in this way and this feel vulnerable, but how can we like, think about this in a more cultural way instead of perhaps changing the whole thing.
Yeah, that it makes me think of people like Durgadas, for example. It's kind of hard to capture the value that he brings to the table in a lot of ways, because he doesn't, participate in a lot of the platforms that we do utilize. And he may talk about something, whether it be spiral dynamics or whatever route he takes, but it has an influence on the way you approach something, and that does bring a lot of value, and that cannot be truly captured within the community. And that's that's one of the challenges that we have, and praise is a good solution for that. But it, it's hard to quantify it at the end of the day. And so I think if we have multiple systems of where we can have source cred and praise, and maybe an operations fund, and we take different approaches towards different pieces of the what makes a DAO, and figure out multiple systems that run in parallel with each other, I think it would be hugely beneficial.
Definitely. And I think the part that I really wanted to bring up was the emphasis on evaluating the outputs. Because we can say, hey, there's an objective process that we're putting into place, and everyone agrees to it, cool. But until we know what the outputs of that objective process are, to stick to that as objective, like objective fairness, is kind of putting the cart before the horse, because we don't really know what the outputs of that process will be until we evaluate and match it up. And I think Zargan brings this back all the time, is like, start with the goals of the system, not the processes of the system, because the processes can stack up and stack up and stack up, and suddenly your system is doing something completely different from what you wanted. just because you're relying on these processes which you've decided are objective, as opposed to working backwards from the goal of the system, which maybe we say, hey, we want an equitable community, and we notice that traditional payment systems often leave out this invisible care work. So we want to compensate for this, this being left out of traditional accounting systems, so that we can create, as Nate just said, this like complementary value tracking system. But then if we lose the other one and we only have this form of value tracking system, then we're incentivizing certain things, showing up in calls, dishing praise, doing a series of small tasks that get a lot of praise, as opposed to doing larger tasks that have longer periods, which probably lots of token engineers are kind of in that, or people who are working on bigger token engineering initiatives are in that latter category, and therefore end up with less of the governance overall because of that. So I think we just need to kind of do this constant reality check and say, hey, are the outputs of this process matching the goals that we want, the reason that we launched it in the first place? And I think there are all sorts of ways that we can adjust this scalably as well. One of my big things with the praise process and all processes is scalability. If we have to go back through and say, oh, Durgadas did this, and Sean did this, and Jeff did this, how are we going to evaluate these three people against each other? We'll just devolve into everyone has their own, opinion of what should be more or less. I think there are some statistical analysis tools that we can use, like, in a test, if a bunch of students failed, what does the teacher do? They bell curve it, right? They apply like a standard distribution that moves the distribution into something more acceptable or termed fair, like the standard distribution curve. So I think there are certain tools we can do within the data science, data analysis that can perhaps suggest some 80-20 solutions on how we can look at this distribution and see, does it match our community estimation of, is this fair? And maybe we can do some kind of adjustment to the distribution and then say, hey, is this more fair or less? And maybe we can have that kind of discussion as a community.
We passed the hour, so maybe we'll wrap up this call. But I think so much came up from here. Thank you all for all your inputs, and we can continue discussing in the forum and Jeff's post.
And there's a param party going on right now, just below this.